I promise you guys, I do not get paid nearly enough for this bullshit. I don't care if you saw my OBS. I'm annoyed. Alright? I was trying to go to sleep. But Twitter was like, you know what? You should take a look at me. So I'm going to go ahead and go through this whole story really quick, and then we're going to talk about it. So this whole thing starts with Kevin Feige paying a visit to James Gunn on the set of The Suicide Squad. Kevin and James have worked together for quite a while now, ever since he was probably selected to do the Guardians of the Galaxy film, probably sometime around 2011 or 12. So James says that Kevin was very cool and supportive about him directing the film, and says that there isn't enmity behind the scenes like there is in the fan community. So this guy, Jacob Airy, who I don't know who he is to be the real one, says, the only enmity at James Gunn is when you insult the fans like this. Sure, there are a few weirdos and trolls, but you bigwigs is why your audience is dwindling. Which is a strange thing to say, because the Joker movie, which is a movie that a lot of people, myself included, thought was going to be, either not very good or not very successful, still made over $1 billion. My thoughts about the movie notwithstanding, I'm not going to talk about the quality of the film whatsoever. It made $1 billion. Aquaman made $1 billion. Suicide Squad and Batman vs Superman both made like $800 million each. One of them made $700 million. Birds of Prey was a relative flop, but that's bound to happen every once in a while. It's just a thing that happens from time to time. And so James says, I didn't insult the fans. I am a fan, and I think that by far the majority of folks in the fan community are accepting, cool people. But to say that there isn't a lot of unnecessary fractiousness between some Marvel and DC fans would be denial, ignorance, or dishonesty. And so Richard Castaldo, a U.S. House candidate, says the DCEU keeps getting betrayed by people leaking secrets, plans, and ideas to the other side. Zack Snyder wasn't the first or last to be betrayed. I hope you aren't betraying anyone. I enjoy your art, but competition is healthy and people shouldn't give DC's plans to Marvel. James responds with, I'm confused by the concept leaking secrets to the other side. I've never heard anything like this. Jezebel says, there are conspiracy theories that Geoff Johns betrayed Zack Snyder and leaked his 5-film Justice League plans with Kevin Feige, Darkseid Thanos, Batman Iron Man Sacrifice, time travel aspects, etc. I have no idea about any of this, but I think that's what he's referring to. Thanos was in a Marvel movie a year before Zack was ever hired by DC, so how could that be the case? Now that is legitimately incorrect. Zack was brought on to make Man of Steel a while before the movie came out. But, so this person points that out and says, also the plot to Endgame was Zack's Justice League plot until he was betrayed by Judas Johns and they reshot the whole movie. And so this guy's like, please don't be that guy. I love Snyder and I'm very much looking forward to blah, 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 blah. Alright. So, I need to show you the pictures that the person was using for evidence here. Basically, the whole thing is that, yeah, that's a really good point. Things, happen in the comics a lot. But, the whole point here, essentially, is that for some reason they think that Geoff Johns, of all people, is leaking plot details and information from DC to Marvel so that Marvel can get there first. I can't seem to find the other picture, but I'm gonna pull it up. I have it saved on my phone real quick, so I'm gonna read it first. I'll put it up on screen when I get around to editing this thing. You can already see this one, but I'll get to it very soon. This is just really stupid. Geoff Johns, of all people. Okay, so apparently they're saying that the concept of the Justice League losing to Darkseid is the original Avengers losing to Thanos concept. That was for some reason. Oh, okay, here we go. Yeah, Justice League loses to Darkseid, Avengers lose to Thanos. 5-year time gap. Time travel. Batman dies, Iron Man dies. And on top of that, Darkseid comes to kill Lois Lane so he can turn Superman evil. Thanos comes to kill Vision so he can get the Mind Stone. Everyone protects Lois Lane from Darkseid. Lois dies. Everyone protects Vision from Thanos, even though Vision dies anyway. A goddess/god who aims for the big bad guy's head. This is funny, especially this last part, because literally the only reason that half of the universe got destroyed is because Thor did not aim for the head. And if Wonder Woman had aimed for Doomsday's head in Batman vs. Superman, Superman wouldn't have died. So they both didn't go for the bad guy's head, and it had massive consequences. Now, this first one is strange to me. Darkseid comes to kill Lois Lane so he can turn Superman evil. I responded to that, and I was like, well, why would Lois dying turn Superman evil? If you kill the love of my life, I'm not going to start working for you. So this guy's like, his guard went down and Darkseid corrupted him with the anti-life equation. Then why does he need to kill Lois to do so? Why can't he just get him in a sleep or something? Just boom tube into the room. The death of Lois broke his spirit, which allowed Darkseid to take over his mind with the anti-life. It has nothing to do with a surprise attack. I'm going to go ahead and respond to this real quick. These are some surprisingly in-depth film details. Have you seen it yet? Also, how are you guys not fed up with evil Superman trope? Because I'm tired of it. And I'm not even really a huge DC fan, but I'm just annoyed. Now, what I find interesting here is that for some reason they make it seem like the bad guys winning is some sort of DC exclusive concept. Like, the good guys have never won the movie before. They won in... The bad guy wins in 7. The bad guy wins in Zodiac. The bad guys win in Transformers 3, I think? Kind of. Well, it depends on how you look at it, I guess. Not really. I think I may have gotten that completely wrong. The bad guy technically won in the first G.I. Joe movie. You know. But, you know, when Infinity War was announced in 2014, it was announced as Infinity War Parts 1 and 2. Even though they went back on the second movie being called Part 2, we knew just from that title structure that this was going to be a two-part story. And typically, in order to have a two-part story, something has to happen in the middle of the story or at the end of the first part that would create room for a continuation or a conclusion in the second part. If they beat Thanos in the first movie, that wouldn't exactly work, now would it? You know? And is it possible that Zack came up with all of this Justice League stuff before these movies got announced in 2014? Sure, maybe. But I highly doubt it was all storyboarded and cast and all that stuff, because the cast of BVS, if you remember, was still being announced and expanded throughout 2015. My phone just big speed at me. Stop, please. Anyway. From like up until a little bit into 2016, it was kind of strange. I was worried that the movie wasn't going to be ready by the time it came out. Time travel is not an exclusive thing to DC. Yes, Barry Allen can run so fast he can time travel, as can Wally West, as can Bart Allen, as can Eobard Thawne. But time travel has been a thing in Marvel Comics for a long time. I mean, just today, Kang the Conqueror got announced to be in Ant-Man 3, I guess. Kang the Conqueror is a long-time Marvel Comics supervillain who is a time traveler. Doctor Doom has a time machine. There is literally... And what's funny about the time travel that you see here, this right here, I'm pointing like you can see it, this with Barry Allen is an example of Barry going back in time to try to warn Bruce of something so that a particular future does not come to pass. This time travel that you see in Avengers Endgame is the entire team going back in time to steal from themselves so that they can fix the future that they're already in. Batman dies, Iron Man dies. Now, apparently this was supposed to be some sort of 5-film plan, some 12-step program shit for Justice League. Ben Affleck's Batman would not have been spending nearly enough time with the audience for his death to matter, especially because we had just come off of the death of Superman. And as we've seen from the Snyder Cut, Superman was always supposed to come back in Justice League. So no matter what, you go from one major character dying and it's completely hollow to another major character dying, and maybe they come back, maybe not. But still, Iron Man's death was very impactful. And do you want to know why? Because we had 11 years of history with Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of the character. We got to watch him grow, change, adapt, evolve, mature into a proper human being with compassion and other emotions that make someone, human. Guilt, remorse, love, empathy. That's If Iron Man had died in the first Avengers movie, we wouldn't have really cared that much. Would we have? If he had died in Age of Ultron, maybe if he died in Infinity War, but not in Civil War. Like, we needed we needed Tony to evolve to a point where he had something to lose, something to live for. That way, when he died, it would actually have some weight, some impact. Comic book characters die. It's what happens, from time to time. Infinity War script is impossible to finish right now, says writers. Still a work in progress. Okay, right here it says Man of Steel wasn't supposed to kick off a cinematic universe originally. That's not the point. How far can we move the goalposts? Anyway, the important thing as well is that people, for some reason, think that, like, the MCU is ripping off DC by having Thanos in the movie when DC has Darkseid. Now, yeah, Thanos was created in the comics to be basically a rip-off of Darkseid. But if you're building a cinematic universe, which was something that was pretty much always planned by the MCU, which is another thing. The MCU has pretty much always had direction. It has been flexible. It has been adaptable as, new characters have been introduced, new characters have been acquired. But they were always headed to Thanos, no matter what happened. They started teasing him literally as early as possible. As early as possible, the very first Avengers movie. So we had 6 years of build-up, from a post-credit scene in the first Avengers film to the third Avengers film. 6 years. The DCEU couldn't even last 6 years. By 2019, we didn't have an actor for Batman anymore, didn't have an actor for Superman anymore. Nobody's sure what's happening to the Green Lantern or Cyborg movies. Nobody was really sure what was happening to the Flash movie. The DCEU last year was in shambles. It's getting back to some state of normalcy now, but it was not doing okay last year. 6 years is a lot to ask for DC, apparently. Anyway, DC was probably always going to try to build towards Darkseid, but honestly, the very first Justice League movie, that feels rushed. I legitimately think that while I'm not going to say that Marvel, trademarked how to build a cinematic universe, but I do think that it takes time and effort and crafting if you're going to try to build this universe and then destroy it by having some sort of cataclysmic event. Crisis on Infinite Earths took place after 50 years of character creation and development and writing in DC. It didn't happen right away. Barry Allen dying in that story meant a lot to a lot of people. Wally West getting zapped out of existence after New 52 meant a lot to me because that was my Flash. He had been the Flash for about 23 years. You need time with something in order to care that you lost it. You get what I mean? Anyway, now, I don't know why people are saying that Jeff Johns is the guy that's leaking, because people have worked for Marvel and DC before. Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Alex Ross, Jack Kirby. Sure, it's mostly artists. We would get Mike Golden and Mike Grell, but artists get a chance to see the story pretty early because they're the ones that are drawing it. So if professionals in the industry have been able to work for one company and then go work for the other company, and it's totally fine, and it's been that way for decades at this point. Even Stan Lee has done some work with DC. Marvel. Kevin Feige uh, I believe has done some work for DC in the past. Um, but it really doesn't matter. You know, Joe Quesada worked for DC and Marvel. Like I don't I don't get why somebody working on both sides. I also want to point something out. This is a picture of Josh Brolin in his mocap suit in 2016. Do you know what that means to me? That means that there was a significant amount of scripting done by that point in 2016 because they had cast him. I think, yeah, they cast him in 2014. All right. Now, tell me how many DCEU movies there were in 2014. There was one. It was just Man of Steel. Now, Marvel, maybe you could argue that they were fast-tracking Infinity War. It doesn't really matter, though, because they had a plan and they knew exactly how they were going to get there. DC didn't have one yet. On their side, people were still arguing about whether or not Ben Affleck was a good fit for Batman. You know? There was like no footage for even BVS at this point. So, if you're trying to tell me that they stole storyboards from a movie that came out in 2016 and only had Josh Brolin in mocap in 2016, why would they have been moving so slow on stolen information and borrowed time? It literally makes no sense to me. Maybe I'm stupid. Actually, I want to see what these two replies are. Snyder literally confirmed all of this during his little fan event last year, I believe. I'm not fed up with Superman because there's plenty of good Superman out there too. Zack Snyder said that's what would happen at his convention to celebrate his birthday. He said that it was his original plan until WB told him to change it. None of that means anything. I don't understand. But yeah, if they were able to get it out that fast, or no, if they'd gotten the information that early, then why did the movie take until 2018 to come out? Like that's the part that isn't making sense to me. You know? And it blows my mind that comic books have been similar for a long time. You know, Marvel and DC have been picking at each other for decades. Ant-Man and the Atom, Deathstroke and Deadpool, what am I thinking about? Superman and Hyperion. I'm struggling. I'm struggling really hard. I don't know why. I don't know what's happening to me. Darkseid and Thanos. But when it comes to building towards something, Marvel always was ahead of DC. Iron Man 1 came out the same year as The Dark Knight. It is pretty much impossible to convince me that with a head start that massive, Marvel could have really been stealing from DC. Because think about it, right? Man of Steel came out 1 year after the first Avengers movie. The first Avengers movie. Which was the 6th film in the MCU. Like, I don't... Actually, I kind of want to know something. I want to know, when was Joss Whedon hired for Avengers? Whedon was brought on... Are you kidding me? Whedon was brought on to do the Avengers in 2010. The same year that Zack Snyder was brought on to do the Man of Steel movie. In fact, he was brought on earlier than Zack was. So you bring Zack on to do a Superman movie, and you bring Joss on to do the first Avengers movie, the 6th film in the MCU, and what is going to be a huge stepping stone in building towards the guy that was in the post-credit scene of that film in particular. You want to build to Thanos, right? You want to start that early, right? And so that's what they were doing. It literally doesn't make any sense to me. Because there's 3 very important things to remember here, right? As we just learned, Joss Whedon was hired to do the Avengers before Zack Snyder was hired to do Man of Steel, right? It took an entire extra year to get Man of Steel out. So by the time that Man of Steel comes out, we're already working on Avengers 2, which, as you guys might remember, had nothing to do with Thanos until the post-credits scene. Nothing to do with him. He was an afterthought until the end of the movie. Right? So even if these storyboards were coming out in 2014, 15, 16, Marvel was going to put out Avengers Infinity War in 2018 no matter what. And lastly, this is the most important thing. Big villains and building towards them is a thing that happens on TV. Wilson Fisk was not defeated definitively until the third season of Daredevil. The Reverse Flash is still a threat on the Flash series. He has not been properly dealt with, and we are 6 seasons deep. But is Daredevil ripping off the Flash series? I really don't think so. Just, this is why I hate Twitter. This is why I don't like admitting that I read comics or that I'm a fan of Marvel or DC at all, because I love Spider-Man and Wally West Flash equally. I love them both. They are my 2 favorite superheroes. But don't tell the internet that. Don't tell anybody that you like a Marvel thing and a DC thing. James Gunn is doing the Suicide Squad movie because he took the job while he didn't even have a job at Marvel. He had been fired. His reinstatement wasn't announced until after he had taken this project, and that's why Guardians 3 isn't going to start shooting until like next year or 2022 or something like that. Like, I feel like I've just been ranting for a while. If you made it this far in the video, good for you, man. I don't even know what thumbnail I'm going to make for this, but I am upset. As you can see, it's almost 4 a.m. And this is what I'm doing with my day. I should have been asleep 2 hours ago. But I literally, it doesn't make any sense to me. And another thing, right? I just want to point out the elephant in the room. Batman vs. Superman and Captain America Civil War came out the same year. Batman vs. Superman was announced before Captain America Civil War. It was Captain America 3, Captain America Serpent Society, and then Captain America Civil War. Serpent Society was a dummy title, right? No. What's important to remember about that is that they were probably working on an early draft of Captain America Civil War in 2013 or 14, probably around the time they got done officially working on the script for Captain America the Winter Soldier. No. The films are similar. You know, there is political elements, there is manipulation on the side of one of the heroes, there's a bombing at a political hearing, there's plenty of stuff that makes the story similar. However, Civil War as a movie is largely faithful to the core elements of the Civil War comic. There was an accident by a rookie hero that didn't exactly know what they were doing. There were consequences. There was a legal document that people had to sign. Tony and Steve disagreed on it. It fractured the team, and they fought. And Spider-Man was involved. Those are the Cliff's Notes version of what happened in the Civil War comic, which I have read and I hate. Batman vs. Superman isn't really based on a huge comic event like that. Sure, it takes a lot of inspiration from The Dark Knight Returns, but it's not. It doesn't follow anything as closely as the Civil War movie follows the Civil War comic. And another thing, Civil War was something that, if you pay attention to the Avengers movies, was something that they were probably always going to be building towards. Tony and Steve did not get along in the first Avengers movie, and even more so in the second one. It's just how the characters that interacted with each other. I literally don't understand. Alright, I'm done. I gotta go to bed. I'll see you guys later. I love you all.